Hey yo, if you want to see Jinx's face up and also her tattoos, then head over to part 1. But if you know you're in the right place, then let's get into it. I continue sewing the straps onto her top. This strap is going to be the third strap that attaches to the back of her top. The front of her top needs a little bit more shaping, so I added 2 little darts to the front of the bodice, keeping in mind where the decorative X will be. Next, I begin sewing a long strip of fabric along the bottom, starting on one side and going far off the edge of the other. This will end up wrapping around the entire base of the whole top. Before I sew the bottom strip to the back piece, I compare it to the pattern. I even pin it in place, that way I can try it on the doll to double check its placement. I mark where I want the holes to be on the front, and after I cut them out, I rim them with glue to keep the edges from fraying. I halfway sew on the final strap that will be going over her left shoulder, and then I paint the entire thing black. I paint gold some small metal loops to attach the front of her top at the holes. I cut and paint tiny ribbon pieces to crisscross in the front, as well as 2 smaller ones in the back. Small details like 3 ribbon belt loops that will be placed in the front, or a tiny metal clasp and gold detailings are done up as well. At this point, I realized that her tattoos were scraping off, and I had to take a small detour to re-go over them. For the straps around her neck, I decided to paint them on instead of sewing them to avoid bulkiness. Then her top becomes permanently attached to her, and I later go in with gray and black paint detailing. Her belt is just made of 3 thin straps. For the one that goes over her hip, I mark where I want the studs to be, and then I cut its length out of fabric. I round its edges, fray check it with some glue, and then I curve it around the belt and glue it in place, all before painting it black. I glue on miniature studs that I hand sculpted and painted silver. I cut out and painted miniature V's out of cardstock to go on her suspenders. as well as adding an extra flap for her little belt. Her belt buckle is made from more cardstock that I later prime black and then go over in gold and bronze. Then I make sure that bitch is glued on together better than most of Jinx's psyche. Her shoes are actually started off the ones that came with the Hermione doll that Jinx is made of. I just cut off the extra belt to make room for the tongue of the shoe. Then I trace out a pattern for its new shape on parchment paper. The tongue of the shoe was just a rounded out rectangle, so I did not feel the need to film making that piece. Then I trace it twice onto a piece of fabric, one for each shoe, painting both sides of the pieces black. I would have made her shoelaces out of pink embroidery thread, but I didn't have any, so I did the next best thing. I tear apart a pink piece of yarn and then I flat iron it smooth. Afterwards, I do a small touch-up of a more vibrant pink color of paint on it. Then I did the totally easy process of lacing up her shoes. That wasn't a pain in the ass at all. She has miniature metal pieces all over her shoes, and I made all of them out of cardstock. I cut out their shapes, glue on miniature rhinestones as bolts, and then paint on their metallic colors. Finally, I sew on metal rings to the corners of the shoes. And here's the final look for the shoes. Just like her tattoos, the band-aid that I had drawn on her leg had begun to scratch off, so I ended up going back over it in acrylic paint in hopes it'd stay on better. You should probably sand your doll if you recreate this. Moving on to her hair, I decided to take the yarn route, using chalk pastels to stain it a slightly darker blue color. I flat iron them smooth. I glue them on in small pieces to the back of her head, and I make sure that as I glue them on, I keep track of where I want her middle part to be, creating two sections of her hair that are going to be later braided. In the show, Jinx's braids are very slicked back to her head, so I try and keep it as smooth as possible. For the sides of her head, I cut very small sections of the yarn into fine points and I glued them around her ear. This is to make the curved effect and also to make her edges. I then repeated that on the other side of her head. I cover the entire left side of her head with one large piece of yarn, and I cut the edges that way they all go along her middle part. For her bangs, I glue them on in two parts. I have them overlap, kind of, to cover her roots. One section of her hair goes down in her face a lot more than the other, and the other one just kind of goes a little bit sideways with a lot of volume. The section of her bangs that comes down in her face a lot more will be cut into a very pointed and narrow shape, whereas the other one I just kind of trim. To begin styling her bangs, I heat up a butter knife with a flat iron. That way I can take the heat from that and curve her bangs and straighten and flatten and do whatever I want to them. It's crazy, right? The top section of her hair gets flattened to the right side of her face. That way it can curve a little bit better. Both sections of her hair also get curved under, that way they fit her face shape a little bit better. I do end up styling a lot of her hair off camera, but it's all the same methods. Then I just braid up her hair and I tie off the ends with paper strips that I roll into tubes. A little piece of metallic foam will make the top accessory for the very top part of her braids. More strips of paper are rolled into tubes to make the rest of her hair accessories. I use a very thin one at the top of each piece to make a little bit of a rim. Before I show you the final doll, there are also some accessories that I made, such as the flare that she lights up, her childhood cup that we get to see her drink from a few times, even the Hex Tech cupcake. And of course, I had to make her gun. All of which I'll be releasing a video on my Patreon of how I made them. I really love how she came out, and I am very excited to be making more Arcane dolls very soon, with other little dolls and things thrown in between. Such as the upcoming Chihiro doll from Spirited Away I'm going to make. There are also a lot of sneak peeks and behind the scenes on my Patreon and my Instagram, so until then, toodaloo!